Hello everyone, my name is Julia Evers, and for this video I will be going through some practice tips for the TMEA Etude, the G-flat major one. So first things first, this is the lyrical etude. So at the very beginning it is a cadenza. So we don't necessarily have to play it in time quite yet. We don't have to play in tempo until it says a tempo. Once we get to that first triplet that begins on the A flat, that's when we're really going to be starting to play in time. So the very beginning is very cadenza-esque. You are the star. You can kind of play it however you like. It is your cadenza, but it does give you some guidelines on kind of how to play it, starting out soft, playing it very gently, very tranquil with a little bit of a crescendo, and then back down, and then you start playing in time for the rest of the etude. Well, going forward, starting to play in time. Something that will really help to get you more familiar with this etude is practicing your G-flat major scale. Just running through that scale a couple of times before you start practicing this will really help your fingers and your ears be a little bit more comfortable and familiar with what you're about to practice. So really practice your G-flat major scale, and it'll probably help you a lot in terms of this etude. So as with learning any piece of repertoire, the first things first is that you're going to have to learn the correct notes and the correct rhythms before you start adding on things like dynamics and phrasing. So make sure that you are playing the correct notes, make sure that you're playing your G flats and your D flats instead of G naturals. And also make sure that you are playing the correct rhythms and that you're playing it in the appropriate tempo. So something that you can practice mentally, because if you can do it mentally, then you're better suited to be able to play it on the flute. So you can do this while you're walking or while you're sitting in the car. You don't necessarily have to have your flute out for this, but practicing your or going back and forth between your triplets and your 16th notes is going to be really important to this. Whenever you play this for your audition, the judges are really going to be listening to whether you know the difference between your 16th notes and your triplets, and if you can accurately play them, because in this etude you're switching back and forth a lot between those two types of rhythms. Having your metronome out and either counting out the rhythms, so 1 E and a 2 E and a 1 la li 2 la li 1 E and a 2 E and a 1 la li 2 la li, or even 1 E and a 1 la li 1 E and a 1 la li. Just really practice going back and forth between those two rhythms, and that'll help you a lot more to be able to play this etude more rhythmically accurate. Also be wary of the rhythm in measure 19. It might trip you, but it is a triplet and then 2 eighth notes and then a dotted 8th and 16th, okay? Triplet 2 and 3, a 1. All right, so don't get tripped up on that. Once you have the correct notes and the correct rhythm, then you can start incorporating more details like your dynamics and the time switches that are, or time markings that are put on here. There's a couple of moments where you are slowing down and then going back into an a tempo. So really make a note of where those places are, how much you want to slow down, and be wary of what your original tempo was that you started in, so you can come right back to that tempo. So a big thing with this etude, since it is the slower and more lyrical etude, is the musicality of this. Musicality is going to be a very, very big factor within this etude. So start thinking of the different tone colors or sounds that you can incorporate into this. I think of the beginning as like a very light pastel yellow or like a very light daisy color, and then that slowly transitions into a more bright yellow color, and then it starts to get a little bit darker, a little bit more of a purple or blue color, and even then that darker color tends to shift within its shades. So that's kind of how I think of it in terms of tone colors. If that's not something that you think of, then maybe you can just try to incorporate just a different sound or a different way that you're trying to express the phrasing. So it may be you're playing a little bit softer, or maybe you're playing a little bit louder, or maybe you're playing very soft with a very pale sound, or you might be playing very loud with a very dark and edgy sound. So those are just some things to consider as you're going through this etude to make it a little bit more interesting. Really think like, what message or what feeling are you trying to convey while you play this? Something else to think of is making sure that your airstream is going to be constant and not faltering. We have a lot of slurs in this etude, so you really want to make sure that your airstream is going. And I'm not saying to be tense or tight in your airstream, but let's see if you can hear the difference between these two types of airstreams. So the first one is where my airstream is constant and it is constantly moving and being pushed forward, and the second one definitely had more fluctuations. Kind of like a train on its tracks. The train doesn't just stop or like falter off the track, or a wheel doesn't just kind of like come off, or it should not, but really just that it's going forward and it's just chugging along and always going in a very forward motion. So that's how you should think of your air, especially when we have these slurs. For example, if I play with a very constant airstream for this, versus a not constant airstream, or just not thinking of my air going in a very horizontal manner. Something that might be worth your while outside of this etude to practice would be your intervals, your octave jumps, or any other type of interval leaps where you have to slur up. So that type of exercise could be something like Also, something that I encourage you to do is to plan out how you're going to play this etude. Where are you going to breathe? What is the vibrato going to sound like? Is it going to be a shallow vibrato? Is it going to be a deep vibrato? Is there going to be any vibrato at all? So plan out your vibrato and plan out your breath marks and where you're going to breathe, because I would hate for you to be in the middle of your phrase and then all of a sudden you're out of breath and you have to interrupt the middle of the phrase with a So don't plan any of your breath marks to be in the middle of the phrase. Wait until after a phrase has occurred, or if there's a small rest somewhere, or basically anywhere that is not going to interrupt the musicality or the middle of the phrase. Or don't breathe in the middle of a slur. Maybe breathe right after the end of a long note, or right at the beginning of when you're going to be tonguing something new. See, that's very distracting and it kind of takes away from what I'm playing. Also, for the vibrato, of course you can, choose your own vibrato. Just make it sound convincing, or however it will fit within the etude or for that note or notes, whatever is going to work. Don't play something where you don't maybe necessarily need vibrato, or maybe the vibrato is an overkill, or the vibrato may not be enough. You might need more vibrato. So a good way to kind of test this out is to record yourself, play through it, see if you liked it or not, just listening for the vibrato. Did you like the vibrato? Was it good? Was it what you intended it to be? Was it too much? Was it not enough? Just listen to yourself and ask yourself these questions. That way you can really make sure that you are practicing it how you're going to perform or do your audition. So whether that be you do your vibrato in 16th notes or in a triplet form or even in 8th note form, the possibilities are endless. Just make it sound convincing and that it fits. So from some examples of different vibrato fluctuations. The choice is really yours when it comes to preparing this etude with its musicality and its phrasing. Really put your own expression into this etude. That is what it's all about, making sure that you're playing the correct notes, the correct rhythm, and in the correct tempo, and that you play it with a very good musical mindset, and that the phrases are there, and that it just sounds luscious and just very beautiful and musical, okay? If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I am always happy to help, and I hope that this video was very helpful for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.